You're looking at three very different pieces of Atari hardware. This is the modern Atari 2600 Plus, released 2 or 3 years ago. And this is the original 2600, released in 1977, also called the Heavy Sixer. And right here in the middle, something most people never seen before. There's an Atari POP circuit board. These two consoles are easy to understand. They're made to be used at home. You plug them in, pick a game and play as long as you want. This board in the middle is something else entirely. This is a POP board, point of purchase. It's essentially a dedicated Atari 2600 system made for stores. So instead of cartridges, the games are built directly into the hardware. 42 games, all on this board. And unlike a home console, this board controls the experience. It decides when the game starts, how long you're allowed to play, and when it stops. Not because something is wrong, but that's exactly what it's designed to do. So this was how Atari let people try games in the stores. You didn't read about them, you didn't watch someone play it on YouTube, because YouTube wasn't even invented back in those days. You walked up, picked up a controller and played for a short moment. That's what the POP was all about. And as far as anyone can tell, these systems were mainly used in the United States. There's very little evidence that they ever existed here in Sweden. And which makes it a bit unusual that this board ended up here at all. So I came across it while buying other collector items. I also collect old retro video games. So the seller mentioned that he had this one. He had bought it on eBay a long time ago, and it's been lying in the box in his basement. And once I understood what it was, I knew I had to build something of it, because it's too much history just laying on the box in the basement somewhere in Sweden. So, but around the same time, Atari released the 2600 Plus. That was just not a display piece, but as a working console meant to be played. And that connection was hard to ignore. So this project became my way of tying these two worlds together. The original POP board and the modern Atari 2600 Plus. My plan was not to build a perfect replica, but as my own version of what a POP kiosk could look like if you tie these two together. So it's all built around the original hardware, the PCB. It got original joysticks, original paddles and fire buttons, but that's all that I got. So this is my version of an Atari kiosk.
Polisstation i Eda i Värmland. En svensk chef på vandring vid Gränsgatan mitt emellan. Ett stort hållplatsande här. So now it's working. What do you do? It's cold.
thought was,
oh, yeah, I can go over it.
is you're going to put one flick on this side here. Mm-hmm. We figured we'd have one for each side of the car. So we made for the CNC machine 2.
And I have a rear mirror and blasting. I can't use it. You can't see anything. Front of the motor. This is number 2 looks so.
Världen runt omkring dig som spelare, den var i princip gränslös och du kunde forma den hur byar, massor av grejer och det inspirerade ju såklart delstaten Washington. Och i första klass sitter otaliga techprofiler som vill investera i företaget. Bland annat Sean Parker som startat Napster och tidigt investerat i Facebook. Men alla
för att fråga Marcus och Jakob
plan för framtiden. Ingen tydlig idé om vad han ska göra med sitt liv.
New hoses on the fuel system.
Really watched it. Dyson system is completely fine.
World order. Thanks. The country currently weapons. When Prime Minister Fumio Kishida invited G7 leaders to the city in 2023.
Motion-turné för den första plattan.
Högst skeptisk av Serengeti.
Men efter flera om och men tar de
1982 is total.
This is really hard for us. There's a lot of people to thank. There's a lot of people. My friends.
vad man ska förvänta sig av kvällen.
Dels var det lite sannolikt.
I Los Angeles på 70-talet. Idag är det bara gitarristen Steve Lukather kvar från originaluppsättningen.
Pojkvänner och aldrig fick dansa på skoldans och så. Och precis så hade jag det hela min tonår. Jag var tenårsfotral och jag svettade och så.
Små, ja. Och så sjunger hon a cappella. When a man loves a woman. Jag får ramla.
Företag fick knäcka rätt något som han beskriver som ett stålbad.
Det är inte bara en ekonomisk företag.
It was pretty terrifying. I should say, like, we couldn't really.
Här för Almedalsveckan, då får jag skriva.
Minskade intäkter rapporterar Sveriges Radio och Ekot.
Rapporten bygger på uppgifter från 254 medlemsföretag som tillsammans äger 96. Över nattågstrafiken mellan Stockholm. Idag är det med i slutet av juni, någon gång enligt amerikanska medier.
We're about to have a food fight. Fixed. Nice work.
Och med glädje skämt bort sina igen.
Föräldrarna som bestämmer. Okej, nej, inte men ja, vi kan, som om man är inte riktigt där då.
Och jag älskar dig, Natta. Min enda, min evigt enda, trofast enda, min kärlek. Och trots hans tjejliv, även om det tär på honom, får blindtarmsinfektion så långt gången. Men han går under namnet Jacques Monar. Men det räcker inte med att bara... I Mexico City har tillvarat vidare för en snart 60-åriga trots.
Hur Alfred reagerar på den syrliga recensionen vet vi inte. Men kanske...